The night Sarah buried her husband, she stood in her empty kitchen staring at the wall. The funeral guests had gone, leaving behind casseroles she couldn't imagine eating and a silence so complete it felt like another presence in the room. When her doorbell rang at 9 p.m., she wasn't expecting anyone, especially not Michael, the single father from across the street whose wife had left 3 years ago. His eyes held a familiar grief as he stood awkwardly on her porch with a thermos. "I remember how the nights were the hardest," he said simply. Sarah felt something crack inside her as she whispered the words she never thought she'd say to anyone, "Can you stay tonight?" Sarah Matthews had planned her entire life meticulously. College at 22, married to James by 25, their dream house in the suburbs by 30. What she hadn't planned for was becoming a widow at 34. The heart attack had been sudden. James collapsed while mowing the lawn on a perfectly ordinary Saturday afternoon. One moment he was there, pushing the mower in neat lines across their front yard, whistling that Beatles song he loved. The next, he was gone. The funeral passed in a blur. Sarah remembered fragments: the weight of her black dress, the suffocating scent of lilies, the endless parade of sympathetic faces offering condolences that sounded like they were being spoken underwater. Her mother had stayed for a week afterward, but eventually had to return to Florida. Friends called and texted, but their lives continued while hers had stopped completely. Michael Davis lived across the street with his 8-year-old daughter Emma. Sarah knew them only in passing, a wave while collecting the mail, small talk at neighborhood barbecues. James had been the social one. Sarah had always been content to stand in his shadow, smiling and nodding while he charmed everyone. Without him, she felt invisible. That night, when Michael appeared at her door, Sarah almost didn't answer. But something in her responded to the soft, insistent knocking. Maybe it was the knowledge that someone else was awake in the world while she drifted through her insomnia. "I made too much hot chocolate," Michael said, holding up the thermos. "Emma's finally asleep, and I saw your lights were still on." Sarah stepped back to let him in, suddenly aware of her unwashed hair and the oversized sweatshirt that had belonged to James. "I don't think I've slept more than 2 hours at a time since it happened," she admitted. Michael nodded, understanding without needing explanation. "The first few months after Lisa left, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. every night. Like clockwork." He poured the hot chocolate into 2 mugs he found in her cabinet. Emma was 5 then. "I'd sit in her room and watch her breathe just to remind myself that I still had something to live for." They sat at her kitchen table, the silence between them comfortable in a way Sarah hadn't experienced since James died. Everyone else tried to fill the quiet with platitudes or memories or advice. Michael just sat with her, sipping his chocolate, occasionally commenting on something mundane like the weather or a show he'd been watching. "How do you do it?" Sarah finally asked. "Raise Emma alone? Keep going?" Michael considered the question. "Badly, at first," he admitted with a small smile. "I fed her cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row once. Called my mother crying because I couldn't figure out how to braid her hair for picture day." He looked down at his mug. "But you adapt. You find new routines. You learn that it's okay to do things differently than you planned." As midnight approached, Sarah felt the familiar dread building. Another night of staring at the ceiling, listening to the house creak and settle, reaching across the bed for a body that wasn't there. "I should go," Michael said, standing to rinse his mug. "Emma wakes up early." The words escaped before Sarah could stop them. "Can you stay tonight?" She immediately flushed. "I don't mean, the house is so empty, and I understand," Michael said quietly. "Let me call my neighbor to check on Emma. She's used to helping out when I have late meetings." That night, they sat on opposite ends of Sarah's couch watching old episodes of The Office, until Sarah finally dozed off around 3 in the morning. She woke to find a blanket tucked around her and a note on the coffee table: "Made coffee. Had to get Emma ready for school. You were finally sleeping peacefully. M." It became an unspoken arrangement. Michael would come over after Emma went to bed, sometimes bringing leftovers from dinner, sometimes just himself. They would talk or not talk. Some nights they played cards. Other nights they just existed in the same space, Sarah working through the mountain of paperwork that follows death, Michael grading papers for his high school English classes. Emma started coming too, bringing her homework or books. Sarah discovered she knew more about fourth-grade math than she thought. One evening, Emma asked if Sarah could help her practice for her school play. Sarah had been an amateur theater enthusiast in college, something even James hadn't known about her. Reading lines with Emma awakened something she'd forgotten about herself. 3 months after James died, Sarah returned to her job as a graphic designer. Her first project back was a disaster. She couldn't focus, couldn't find the creative spark that had once come so easily. She came home and threw her sketchbook across the room just as Michael and Emma arrived with pizza. "Bad day?" Michael asked, setting the pizza on the counter while Emma went to retrieve the sketchbook. "I can't do it anymore," Sarah said, tears threatening. "Everything I create is garbage. James was always my first critic, my sounding board. Without him, I don't know if anything I make is good." Emma flipped through the sketchbook. "These are pretty," she said, pointing to a series of abstract watercolors Sarah had done during her leave of absence. "They look like how I felt when my mom left. All swirly and stormy but with little bits of light coming through." Sarah looked at the paintings with new eyes. They weren't her usual commercial style, but there was something raw and honest about them. "You think they're good?" Emma nodded solemnly. "They make me feel things. Isn't that what art is supposed to do?" That weekend, Michael helped Sarah set up a small studio in the spare bedroom that had once been designated as a future nursery, a future that had died with James. She started painting again, not for clients but for herself. She called Michael. "I need your honest opinion on something." That night, they spread her paintings across the living room floor. Michael studied each one carefully, his expression thoughtful. "These are extraordinary, Sarah. They're like visual poetry. They're about James. About losing him. They're about you," Michael corrected gently. "About your journey through grief. That's what makes them universal." The night of the gallery opening, Sarah stood nervously by her displayed works, wearing a dress she had bought specifically for the occasion, the first time she had shopped for herself since James died. Michael arrived with Emma, both dressed up and beaming with pride. "You came," Sarah said, surprised to see Emma on a school night. "Wild horses couldn't keep us away," Michael replied. "Emma has been telling everyone at school that she knows a famous artist." As the evening progressed, Sarah was astonished by the response to her work. Strangers approached her with tears in their eyes, sharing their own stories of loss and recovery. A prominent collector purchased her centerpiece, a large canvas depicting a woman standing at the edge of a stormy sea, her face turned toward a break in the clouds where sunlight streamed through. Later, as they celebrated with ice cream at Sarah's kitchen table, Emma asked, "Are you still sad about your husband?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "Yes," she answered honestly. "I'll always miss James. But I'm not only sad anymore. I'm other things too, proud of my work, grateful for good friends, excited about planting tomatoes." Emma nodded, satisfied with this answer. "That's good. Dad says it's okay to be lots of things at once." Michael smiled at his daughter. "When did you get so wise?" 1 year after James died, Sarah stood at his grave with fresh flowers. Michael had offered to come with her, but this was something she needed to do alone. She traced the letters of his name on the headstone. "I'm doing okay," she told him. "Not the way we planned, but okay in a new way." She told him about her art, about the community garden she had helped start, about the grief support group she now facilitated at the community center. "I'm finding my way forward," she said. "I think you'd be happy about that." That evening, Michael and Emma came over for their now traditional Friday night dinner. As Emma set the table, Michael pulled Sarah aside. "I have something to ask you," he said, uncharacteristically nervous. "Emma's school has this father-daughter dance next month, but it's also the weekend of my conference in Chicago. I can't miss the conference, I'm presenting, but Emma's been looking forward to the dance all year." He took a deep breath. "Would you consider taking her? I know it's called a father-daughter dance, but they're pretty progressive about these things now, and she specifically asked if you would go." Sarah felt something warm bloom in her chest. "She wants me to take her?" "She adores you," Michael said simply. "You've become so important to both of us." The night of the dance, Sarah helped Emma get ready, curling her hair and applying the tiniest bit of lip gloss. Emma twirled in her new dress, a cloud of blue tulle. "Do I look pretty?" she asked anxiously. "Beautiful," Sarah assured her. "Your dad is going to want about 1,000,000 pictures when he gets back." At the dance, several parents did double takes when they saw Sarah with Emma. The school principal approached them with concern. "I'm sorry, but this is a father-daughter event," she began. Emma stepped forward. "Sarah is my person," she declared with the absolute certainty only children possess. "My dad couldn't come, so my person came instead." The principal looked at Sarah, who shrugged. "I'm her person, apparently." Later, as they slow danced to a Taylor Swift song, Emma rested her head against Sarah's shoulder. "I'm glad my dad found you," she said. "Or that you found us. Or that we all found each other." "Me too, sweetie," Sarah said, her heart full. When Michael returned from his conference, he brought them both small gifts, a set of professional brushes for Sarah, a science kit for Emma. They sat in Sarah's living room as Emma excitedly described every detail of the dance. After Emma went to bed, Michael and Sarah sat on the porch swing, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. "Thank you for being there for her," Michael said. "For being here for us." Sarah looked at him, really looked at him, for perhaps the first time. Not as the neighbor who had kept her company through grief, not as Emma's father, but as himself, a kind man with laugh lines around his eyes and a quiet strength she had come to depend on. "You've been here for me too," she said softly. "When everyone else went back to their lives, you stayed." Michael's hand found hers on the swing between them. "I know what it's like to be left behind," he said. "To have to rebuild from scratch." Sarah thought about the journey of the past year, the devastating loss, the paralyzing grief, the slow, painful process of finding herself again. She thought about how Michael and Emma had become part of that journey, not replacing what she had lost but helping her create something new. "I'm not the same person I was when James was alive," she said. "I'm still figuring out who this new Sarah is." Michael squeezed her hand. "I like this Sarah very much." 2 years after that first night when Sarah had asked Michael to stay, they stood together in her backyard, now their backyard. Emma danced around them, scattering flower petals on the grass where a small group of their closest friends and family had gathered. Sarah wore a simple cream dress, not white. This wasn't about recreating her first wedding but celebrating a new beginning. Michael's eyes shone as he recited vows that acknowledged their complicated path. "I promise to honor the love that came before, to cherish the present we've built together, and to face whatever the future brings with courage and kindness." Sarah's vows echoed his understanding. "I promise to remember that love isn't a limited resource, that my heart has room for the grief of what was lost and the joy of what has been found." As the small ceremony concluded, Sarah caught sight of her mother wiping away tears. Beside her stood Michael's parents, who had initially been wary of their son getting involved with a widow but had been won over by Sarah's genuine care for Emma and Michael. At the reception, Emma presented them with a painting she had created under Sarah's guidance, 3 figures holding hands beneath a sky filled with stars. "It's us," she explained unnecessarily. "Our family." Later that night, after the guests had gone and Emma had fallen asleep surrounded by discarded party favors, Sarah and Michael stood in the kitchen just as they had so many nights before. "I never expected this," Sarah admitted. "When James died, I thought my chance at happiness died with him." Michael wrapped his arms around her. "Life has a way of surprising us. When Lisa left, I was certain I'd raise Emma alone. I was prepared for that. And now? Now I'm grateful every day that you asked me to stay that night," he said, kissing her forehead. "That you were brave enough to let someone new into your life." Sarah rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I think James would be happy for us," she said. "He always wanted me to be loved." "And Lisa?" Michael mused. "I think she'd be relieved that Emma has you. That's the one thing I know she truly regretted, leaving her daughter." They stood together in comfortable silence, two people who had learned the hard way that life rarely follows the expected path. Their love story wasn't a fairy tale, it was built on shared grief, midnight conversations, and the gradual realization that hearts can heal and expand in ways you never imagined possible. Outside their window, the neighborhood was quiet. In houses up and down the street, other families lived their own stories of joy and sorrow, connection and loss. But in this house, on this night, Sarah and Michael had created something precious from the broken pieces of their past lives, a family bound not by obligation or circumstance but by choice, by understanding, by the conscious decision to stay, night after night, until staying became home. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories of resilience, unexpected love, and the beautiful ways people find each other in their darkest moments. Remember that sometimes the most profound connections come when we're brave enough to ask for what we need and open enough to receive what life offers in return.